It's 1611. Shakespeare finishes The Tempest. But it's not just a corpus of writing, it's a network of traces that's been taken from letters, shipping logs, formal accounts. In the network, he spotlights the trace of virtue, ensuring his audiences are reminded of Jacobean Christianity and its unconditional forgiveness. 400 years later, these traces are the substratum of Margaret Atwood's Hag-Seed, but she twists virtue to better suit her contemporary audience, redefining Shakespeare's need for virtuousness as a means of psychological freedom. These traces challenge us to disdain from impulsiveness and choose compassion over vengeance. By exposing the futility of inherent pursuits for vengeance in its ethical turpitude, Shakespeare illuminates virtue as a means to return to divine order. Continuing the traces of the King James's Bible in its Christian humanist values, Shakespeare reveals the liberating power of unconditional forgiveness through the construction of Prospero's character arc, invigorating compassionate values rather than revenge. Upon usurpation of his dukedom, Prospero metaphorically condemns Alonso in his manipulative performance. These mine enemies are all knit up, shifting audiences to the psychological burden that lies in unfathomable spite, representing himself as an omnipotent autarch and exemplifying his high position in the great chain of being. Furthered in his blind reassurance to Ariel, "Shortly shall my labours end and thou shalt," in which the sibilant reflects his narcissistic hubris connoted with vengeance. Shakespeare highlights the impulsiveness of revenge in its morally depriving nature, driving audiences to console the Bible and its prevailing order rather than impulsive desires. Rather, Shakespeare draws from the Jacobean Christian narrative of the power of unconditional forgiveness, foreshadowed in Ariel, "I shall miss thee, but thou shalt have freedom," wherein the release of Ariel symbolizes Prospero's own moral liberation, revealing the power of compassion and its reassurance of the inevitability of divine order. In the deterrence of revenge, Shakespeare assimilates virtue from Jacobean Christianity and perpetuates its traces through history. Atwood dialogically builds on Shakespeare's narrative by reinvigorating his traces of virtue in Felix Phillips. But amidst the absence of Jacobean Christian values in a secular society, Atwood questions the viability of unconditional forgiveness in a modern, individualistic appropriation that redefines virtue as psychological freedom. The metatheatrical traces of Prospero is reflected in Felix's psychological progression, his conflict with Tony grounded in the synecdoche and cumulative listing of his nattily-suited padded pinstriped shoulder, revealing his sentimentality of disdain as a director, introspectively paralleling the injustice of usurpation in both texts. But Atwood shifts Shakespeare's traces of Protestant culture in Felix's lack of moral responsibility in the anaphora, "We'll let bygones be bygones," rejecting the proposition of unconditional forgiveness in a secular society. By insinuating Felix's negligence to moral principles, Atwood reflects the ability of individuals in a postmodern society to find their own means of psychological freedom. In the epilogue, Felix breaks free from Prospero's intertextual frame through self-acceptance. "To the elements be free." His textual allusion that conflates Miranda to Ariel resonates his introspection of guilt, instilling a sense of freedom through finality. Whilst we live in a society void of external order, Atwood's repurposing of Shakespeare's divine traces of virtue invites us to find a postmodern sense of validation.